I think that the lifeblood of DME is the providers. Geriatric medical sort of looks like them from the standpoint of we're agile and able to do what makes sense for our customers so they can do what makes sense for their patients.
What are some of like the big challenges that come with scaling a national distributor while kind of like trying to maintain that personal service driven touch?
That's a challenge that we're facing now as we see some rapid growth here in the last couple of years, including bringing on an acquisition, which is a nationwide distributor that's largely focused in continuous glucose monitoring, which is DDP, and integrating that into our platform that we have. That's something that we wake up every day as a problem that we're trying to solve.
If you had to predict what the medical supply distribution will look like in 5-10 years from now, what do you think?
Kind of sweeping the corners on some of the stuff that can be automated and give providers that leg up. I think that that's going to be the big aim we'll see here in the coming years. I think that in our space, in the post-acute space, there's sort of less things that can be automated. But in the post-acute space, it's really relationship driven because there's a much bigger service component. We're not delivering truck size orders to a big hospital. We're delivering a box to somebody's house in a lot of cases. And that requires an additional personal touch that I think will remain.
All right, we are live on the #1 DME podcast in America, claim to fame. Today we have JJ Pistoor from Geriatric Medical. How's it going, JJ?
Good. Thanks for having me, guys. Really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, welcome, JJ. Pumped to have you on as well. Appreciate the time.
JJ, for anyone who doesn't kind of know who you are and doesn't know who your company is, please, give us a chance to hear a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. So JJ Pistoor, I'm the Vice President of Revenue for Geriatric Medical and DDP Medical Supply. And, I guess that's just a fancy title for, I'm responsible for everything that has to do with our customer-facing activity, right? So whether it's sales or marketing, our customer service, customer success teams, and even down to our website. So something that, I've been doing for the past number of years with Geriatric Medical. And recently we acquired DDP Medical in St. Petersburg, Florida, both of which are big in the DME space. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, JJ, you lead revenue across two of these big names in post-acute care, in DME distribution between Geriatric Medical and DDP Medical Supply. What kind of originally pulled you toward the world of medical supply and healthcare distribution?
Yeah, it's a good question. Usually answer it with it's every young boy's dream to sell incontinence and DME products into the space. But in all seriousness, I kind of just, happened to find my way here through a windy path, right? So I think out of college, I started in the rental car business, kind of went through that whole, management training process, ended up running the area just south of Boston for one of the big rental car companies. So did that for a little bit. And from there worked for one of the big manufacturers in the medical space as I kind of transitioned out into medical. And, spent a little bit of time there, was attracted to Geriatric Medical. DDP wasn't involved at the time, but was attracted to Geriatric Medical simply because, we're agile, right? And worked with them as a manufacturer rep, saw the way they took care of customers, and it was something I want to be a part of. And, what's really interesting and how that mixes with the DME space is, I think that the lifeblood of DME is the providers. And, Geriatric Medical sort of looks like them from the standpoint of we're agile and able to do what makes sense for our customers so they can do what makes sense for their patients.
JJ, moving from companies like Medtronic and Cardinal Health, which are, monsters, to a more agile company like Geriatric.
Yeah.
What did you take away from those early experiences that kind of shaped how you lead within Geriatric today?
Yeah, so I think that, it's something where I always kind of point back to core values and having like a North Star as an individual, but also kind of aligning that with the core values of a company. Obviously, the companies I worked for in the past, massive companies, super successful, and, are innovative as it relates to a lot of the stuff that we see going on in the market now. But where I think, Geriatric Medical and even DDP now fit in is, sort of like I mentioned, being more agile, right? Less red tape, able to, be quick on our feet and take care of our customers in the way that they would expect. And frankly, it gives us a unique offering and allows us to come up with, solutions that, are on time and make sense for our customers.
You've grown within like Geriatric Medical from kind of like a key account manager all the way up to the VP of revenue, which obviously is quite a jump. What was sort of like that big shift that you experienced as you went from managing accounts to leading like a full revenue organization?
Yeah, it's funny. So when I look back at my experience, I really credit a lot of, what sort of gave me the ability to rise within this organization back to my days in Rent-A-Car. It's sort of like business boot camp when you're coming out of college, getting into one of those roles. And anybody who's, listening, or if you guys have known people in that, that's probably the experience that you've heard of. And that's sort of what I experienced in post acute. It's, a little bit like the Wild West. And we work in the SNF market on the geriatric side as well as the DME market. And, as it relates to when compared to the acute space, it's something where you have to think on your feet and really be able to come up with creative solutions. So I think that when I look at my experience, leaning on what I was able to do in my Rent-A-Car experience really helped me and informed sort of some of those core skills, cutting my teeth, so to speak, to be successful in my current role.
Totally.
Yeah,
No, I know that feeling. I was just going to say, Wayne and I worked together at actually a bunch of different jobs in the past. And it was probably our first jobs out of college. And we did the same thing where we were kind of, grinding away. We were sitting back to back, cold calling doctors all day from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And you had to put your head down and just, do that grunt work in order to get ahead, right?
Totally, 100%.
Yeah.
So I see, our space being a lot like that, the DME world. And again, like, I think it's the providers that sort of make this thing go and tick. And, it's really a, sort of a pleasure coming to work every day and trying to support them. So.
Yeah, and to your point, like it's the wild, wild west in like a good way, meaning, there's a lot of local regional businesses that, there's of course the national ones everyone knows, but the long tail of DME is really mom and pops across the country serving their local community. And it's somewhat of a fragmented business. And a lot of people also just trying to figure out and connect the dots. So, they need to work with good companies like you guys and us just as much as the big guys do. So I'm right there with you and trying to connect the dots every day and help as many people as possible. That said, what makes geriatric medical different? What's the DNA that keeps the company thriving after, I think it's been around for 80 years, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah. So, it's a great question. And I'll kind of point to core values. We have a customer first mentality here that really is second to none and gives us a unique, the unique ability to give those, solutions that our customers need. I think another big thing is meeting customers where they're at, right? I know you guys will agree with this. And that's, I think a core value of Nico Health too is, like you said, Wayne, there's so many different, for example, tech stacks within our customers and different, solutions that they need in order to service their patients the right way. And I think showing up and saying, hey, we want to mold and fit into your system is the right approach. And it's something that, I think having less red tape and less things to cut through and less rigid really helps sort of build those solutions and meet customers where they're at. So,
Yeah,
What are
totally
some
agree.
of the? Oh, sorry, Wayne, you go.
No, I was gonna say I totally agree. Like my experience here at Nico Health, we obviously go up against big players. So, when you're smaller and more agile, you can make a customer a lot happier by, being able to meet their business requirements quicker, more of a partnership approach. There's probably a lot of the same things that have helped us have a lot of success that you guys have done over the last 80 years compared to us probably the last 7 years. So it's cool to hear that it still pushes you guys and is a competitive advantage.
Yeah, what I was just going to say was, what are some of like the big challenges that come with scaling a national distributor while kind of like trying to maintain that personal service driven touch?
yeah, I mean, that's a challenge that we're facing now as we see some rapid growth here in the last couple of years, including bringing on an acquisition, which is a nationwide distributor, right? That's largely focused in continuous glucose monitoring, which is DDP. That's kind of the name of their game, is that diabetes space. And integrating that into our platform that we have, our sales and marketing platform, or our go forward strategy, I think that's something that we wake up every day as a problem that we're trying to solve. So scaling that personal touch is probably the most, challenging aspect of that, right? But it's not something we want to lose because we think it's unique. And one way that we do that, and I would say that the core value that really allows us to keep that personal touch is that we kind of let our customers do what they do best, and we try to work in the background and fly underneath the radar. We almost want to be like the folks that are collecting trash at Disney World. That kind of all just happens underneath, right? So we try to stay out of the way and let them shine. And one way we do that is we don't have a billing arm, right? So that is a unique for us as we scale. That we're not after our customers' business. We're here to support them and make sure that they thrive and grow. So that not having a biller is truly a unique for us as we kind of move forward. And while it gets less personal as you scale, just by nature, we think that's something that kind of keeps that personal partnership touch even as you're growing and getting bigger. So
Love that. And then looking inward, within your organization, you've described yourself as a culture builder. What does that look like day to day inside of, the geriatric world, and now DDP is involved?
yeah, sure. That's something that I think has come natural to me through my career. And it just feels like something that, haven't put a ton of thought and effort into, honestly. But it's maybe just the sales guy in me, Wayne, too, that,
Totally.
constantly wants to be, uplifting and positive. But I think that, a lot of that has to do with the culture here, too, because I think we've all probably been in organizations where, misery loves company type of situation. But it becomes easy when you're surrounded with good people who are kind of walking to the beat of the same drum. So in my experience here, that's what I've seen. And it makes sort of building that culture and making sure that everybody's excited about wins and, feels the pain of every loss. It makes that easy.
Yeah, totally.
JJ, I wanted to ask, so obviously you guys have been around for decades, and as you know, the DME landscape is ever changing and changing fast. Tighter margins, new reimbursement models, all these different things that are coming up in the space. There's obviously a lot of rapid tech adoption and all that sorts of things. So what kind of trends do you see shaping over the next 3 to 5 years that will kind of like mold the space?
Sure. Might give Trey Holterman a shout out here because I've heard him say this a number of times, but I'm, saying I think his number one rule is he doesn't want to say AI, right?
Yeah.
And because everybody says AI, it's become sort of a buzzword. But I think that the way that he thinks about it and the way that we try to think about it here is what technology can we use to better improve our customers' experience, right? I know you guys are doing a ton of great stuff with Nico Health as it relates to that. There's other things coming into the space too that I know a few of them you've had on the podcast. But what I think is extremely exciting is that people are investing in the DME space, right? And I can say that it's not the same everywhere else in post-acute. We're not seeing so many exciting new, solutions and platforms coming into every single space. But seemingly our space is truly being invested in. And I think that's great to see.
Sorry, guys.
Bless you, Wayne. No, bless you.
You can
I'm
crop that out.
over you sneezing. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't even know where the mute button is on this.
Wayne's like coughing,
Jeez.
sneezing,
Don't
gagging.
Don't cut
Jeez.
that
Oh
out.
my god, dude.
Yeah, you can leave it. This is real, man.
Yeah, that's how we. That's
Real
how they know
bodily
it's not
functions.
it's not AI. That's how they know we're
Yeah.
not AI, right?
Yeah,
This
this
is
is
the real guy
just-
under the hood.
Yeah, this is
No.
me, everyone. That was an AI sneeze.
I think that's the biggest thing for me is that like it's so promising to see the investment coming into the space with new technologies.
There's a lot of talk about like relationships versus automation. Do you think technology can like truly replace human element in this industry?
So I think there will be aspects of it, I think there will be aspects of it, right? I think there's always going to be that personal touch that you can't lose. I'll use this for an example, right? You asked me how do you scale and keep that personal touch. I think one thing that's important to me is that our customers, at least in our space, I believe they want to talk to a human being when they have an issue with an order or whatever the case may be. we're dealing with, in a lot of cases, our providers are dealing with vulnerable populations that you need to have that human element that is tough to replicate with AI. But I also think what it's going to do is it's going to level the playing field, right? That's probably the biggest thing that technology is going to do in our space is allow those mom and pops that Wayne and I, Wayne, you mentioned at the beginning. It's going to allow those mom and pops to scale more easily and not to have an army of folks behind them, that are scrubbing claims or, making sure resupply orders are going out. I think that there's going to, that's what AI is going to do in our space and probably in a lot of different spaces is sort of level that playing field. But to answer your question, like I think that, healthcare is a people business in a lot of respects, and it'll continue to be that as we go forward into the future. But
Totally.
there will be gains with technology improvements.
We always say this line on the podcast, right, Wayne, where we say you're not necessarily going to be replaced by AI. You'll probably be replaced by someone who knows how to leverage or use AI. So it kind of like pulls in the whole point of you got to know how to use these tools that are at our fingertips that are making our lives easier, not necessarily just you're not just going to get cut. You have to figure out how to use it, and then you'll be more useful overall for the organization.
It's almost just like
100%.
continuing education, basically.
Right.
But to your point, JJ, there's a lot of these mom and pops, and what I always like is if they use Nico Health, they're getting the same quality service and product and competitive advantage that the big guys that use us too. So, enabling them to use more technology. Sometimes we might work with the business that could be around for 30, 40, even 80 years, and we might be like their first true dedicated like actual end-to-end solution. So it's cool to give them an opportunity to use and adopt technology as well, just as the big guys do, who are usually more capitalized and have more resources.
Totally. It's
JJ, tell us a little bit about 100%. And for our listeners that might not use DDP or know a ton about Geriatric, can you just tell us, I know we talked a lot about you, but I want to give you a chance to kind of let our listeners learn a little bit more about your company, kind of how you could help them, what type of products you guys deal with, just so they're aware of, the opportunity. I know we have a lot of clients with DDP already, so just want to give you a chance to kind of share some of that as well, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. So, I think it's two distinct sides of the business. So, start with DDP, and DDP, a company that Geriatric Medical acquired in the middle of last year. Really exciting product category that they're in with diabetes. It's kind of on that bleeding edge of technology as far as solutions go, and really improves outcomes. So, DDP's claim to fame, I guess, is probably the right phrase to use here. Is that they're one of the top they're one of the top continuous glucose monitoring wholesalers in the country, and they do lots of patient home delivery for suppliers. So we're doing drop shipping on their behalf, white labeling everything, and making sure that the package gets there as if it were to have left the provider's warehouse themselves. So our goal at DDP is to be the fulfillment partner for all the providers we work with. And like I said before, be invisible, right? We want to be invisible to their patient so that our providers can really shine. So if we're doing a good job, the patient doesn't know we exist, and the provider is reaping all the rewards. So that's DDP. And then on the geriatric medical side, there's a big piece of our business that's in the skilled nursing world. So we're the biggest distributor to skilled nursing providers in the New England region. So we work with a ton of facilities. But on the other side of that, we work with DME providers as well in the New England region, and specifically in Massachusetts, where we're the preferred incontinence supplier for Mass Health. So what that means is we work with many of the providers in Massachusetts to do patient home delivery of incontinent products to the Mass Medicaid program. So that's been something that we've been doing for years now. I'm very proud of, and obviously big supporters of organizations like Homes, Home Care, and that's something that we take very seriously, the advocacy piece of it. We feel there's a lot of as we all know, and providers will agree, there's a lot of reasons to advocate for our industry, and we feel like our role in it is at least being there to support and stand shoulder to shoulder and make sure that we're sort of marching alongside to support the industry.
Gotcha. I know, of course, DDP is nationwide. for Geriatric, is it, of course, regional? Is there plans to expand that or kind of be that main regional player?
Yeah, great question. That's something that we're actively looking at. So DDP shipping nationwide, that's something that's already happened. But we're working to build out the infrastructure to ship out of the Midwest, as well as sort of a West Coast distribution center to be able to get incontinence out there. Incontinence is a big bulky product to ship. So you really got to have a network, and that's something that we're building out, and that's one of the exciting things that's going to be sort of happening here into the future.
That's awesome. Yep, I know we have some mutual customers in the Northeast and New England, so that's awesome. But if you guys expand, even better. So hopefully you'll be able to help some of our listeners across the country. And I know we have plenty on using an integration with DDP, so drop shipping directly out of our platform, which is always amazing.
Totally.
Speaking of things that are exciting, what kind of keeps you excited about this space, JJ?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about some of the technology that's coming into the space, but I'd say doubling down on the providers and really the tight knit group of folks that are in each region, but also nationwide. That's something that I've had a chance to be a part of in a big way, working with people like Lauren Estrella at Homes and sitting on that board with the Homes Association and really getting close with a lot of the providers in the Northeast. But also AA Home Care. Recently, in the last couple of years, we've gotten more involved at a national level. So I sit on the Medical Supplies Council with them, where we talk about big nationwide issues in the DME space. That it's really interesting to see all the work they're doing in Washington to bang the drum for providers. So I think that the outlook is strong when you look at the people that we have who are really here to support the industry and the providers. And then, you see a lot of the providers getting involved with this, and it really becomes a mission bigger than just, their own business, but to support the greater industry. So, that's something that I think is a real asset that maybe we don't spend enough time thinking about.
Yep, definitely. And we got to get Lauren on this. I know her well from Homes, and she runs TextMap, so she's awesome. I think Alex reached out to her to be on the podcast, but we've had a couple other people that we've had AA Home Care on, and we've had Jim and Rose, who run the MAMES organization. So we're trying to give these people some spotlight too, which I totally agree I've gone to mostly all of them, and it's incredibly important to our industry and keeping things moving in the right direction. My last question for you, unless Alex has anything else, if you had to predict what the medical supply distribution will look like in 5-10 years from now, what do you think? Is it all robots? Is it all robots and JJ's not answering the phone anymore, or?
Well, like I said, I think that there's always going to be a need to have that human to human experience. I think that in our space, in the post-acute space, there's sort of less things that can be automated. In the acute space, what we see in supplies is that a lot of things are contract driven, right? So there's probably a ton of efficiencies there where it's like, how do I optimize all the contracts that I'm able to buy off of? But in the post-acute space, it's really relationship driven because there's a much bigger service component. We're not delivering truck size orders to a big hospital. We're delivering a box to somebody's house in a lot of cases. And that requires an additional personal touch that I think will remain. But again, like we were saying, kind of sweeping the corners on some of the stuff that can be automated and give providers that leg up. I think that's going to be the big game we'll see here in the coming years.
Awesome. No, that's super solid. It makes a lot of sense. So JJ, I think I have all the questions done for this segment. Usually what we move on to next is what's called a rapid fire. It's sort of like a this or that segment for the podcast. If you're ready to jump into it, we can go right into it now.
Let's do it.
Do your best. Cool. All right. Would you rather ship 1,000 orders yourself or sit through a 4-hour Zoom that could have been an email?
Ship 1,000 orders myself. That feels way more productive.
Okay. Kind of going off what we were talking about before, coffee or Red Bull before a big pitch?
That's a tough one. I don't know if it would be Red Bull. Red Bull, we were talking about a lot of different types of energy drinks.
It should be coffee or Celsius. That's the real debate.
All right, fine.
Probably before a pitch. How's this? I like coffee. I'm a coffee drinker. But before a big pitch, I would probably do a Celsius because, be better for the, your breath. Let's put it that way, right? Like I think that
Sure.
would be the better, smarter choice.
It's tactical.
Right
It's
on.
tactical answer.
Yeah, well thought. If you weren't in DME, what would you be selling? Luxury cars or hot dogs at a baseball park?
I wish I wish I could say luxury cars, but it would probably be hot dogs at a baseball park. That sounds way more my speed. So I'll go with hot dogs at a baseball park.
All right, cool. Would you rather explain what a DME distributor does at a dinner party or assemble IKEA furniture with missing screws?
That's a good one.
IKEA, I'll say this. IKEA's gotten a lot better over the years. IKEA used to be terrible. I recently hung an IKEA cabinet that my wife bought, and I thought it was sitting there for probably 2 weeks before I touched it, and finally I had to do it. But I'll say this: it was a lot easier than I remember some of the furniture from IKEA being to assemble prior to that. But I'd rather talk to you, me.
All right, right on. Would you rather be known for always being early or always being right?
Always being early.
Right on. All right, JJ, I think we got everything we need for today. Today has been a really good show. I really appreciate you coming on. If anyone wants to reach out to you or your company, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, sure. I'll give my email. So JJ period Pistoor Pistoor at gerimed.com. That's probably the best way. Reach out to me there, and I really appreciate you guys having me on. And this is a great thing you're doing. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Perfect. Awesome.
Pleasure to have you, JJ. Thank you so much for the insights.
Yeah.
All
Thanks,
right,
guys. We'll see you.
Appreciate it. See ya.